use. Upgrading your Visual Studio project, which probably you're using older version of Visual Studio and probably 2008, maybe older even, and you want to upgrade it to 2010, 2012, or 2013 with the new version. The second, and in the context of upgrading the Visual WebGui project, of course, then upgrading the Visual WebGui APIs. Some APIs have changed. We'll talk about it. Not too many, but you should be aware of them, and there are ways to deal with that. So Polly will even show a demo here of both, upgrading Visual Studio and the APIs, and then upgrading Visual WebGui client-side customization, which I would say those are the most, challenging parts. But we will give an overview of what are the type of things, or at least give you the tools to categorize your issues and handle them. Polly will show a quick demo on that as well. And then at the end, we're going to show you a few resources that you want to use generally in Visual WebGui to learn the new version, and we'll give some time for Q&A. The questions are going to be managed using the question panel in your webinar panel, which you can write your question. We'll try to echo the question and then answer it, either Polly or myself. Now, first of all, tell you about Visual WebGui. Visual WebGui's first release was back in 2005, so it's quite a mature environment. We're now in version 7. We have a very large community of active developers developing Visual WebGui on a daily basis. Some of them develop some other stuff, but mainly are doing Visual WebGui. We have a lot of applications deployed around the world. Some of the organizations that it's deployed on are very large, Fortune 500, Global 1000, very large organizations, which is very good. And it means that the platform is really mature and it can serve a lot of users and very successful. Moving on to what Visual WebGui is really. So Visual WebGui is actually design time and runtime. So on the design time, it's integrated into Visual Studio. It's providing you a visual designer, which allows you to create applications very rapidly with a what you see, what you get type of designer. You can write C# or VB.NET code behind. It abstracts away the complexities of web, the multiple browsers support, all the stuff that you need to learn on Ajax and jQuery and stuff. But still, if you want to do it, you can still do that in Visual WebGui. So it gives you, the rapid start, but then you can go down to details and even change stuff. It has a lot of controls, a library of rich controls, which allow you to really create rich and very good data-centric applications. We extended in the latest versions to mobile, so we provide a form factor-aware designer, which you can design different layouts for different form factors. We have a library of themes which we've been extended specifically for mobile and not just for mobile, so desktop browsers and etc. And we allow a development server to test your stuff, to deploy your stuff and really test your stuff. And it comes with the design time license. On the server side, you got really, the enterprise level, I would say, or the production level kind of features that you need. Scalability features, security features, management console, the ability to go ahead and optimize the client or serve different clients. So while you design on design time, in the design time tool, you design different layouts for different devices. This server is responsible for serving those different layouts to those specific devices. And of course, all the capabilities in Visual WebGui as a native environment, which allows you to open a simple browser, download a bunch of JavaScript and HTML. It can be any browser that supports HTML4 or 5, and either write code on the server, which is the normal way to do it, or even route some code to the client, which is another feature that we added recently. We also allow the ability to integrate with the local device. Speaking about some features, next slide, Josh. Thanks. Speaking about some features on the Visual WebGui Professional Studio features, which Visual WebGui offers. So first of all, it's integrated with Visual Studio. We talked about the languages C# or VB.NET, any .NET environment. It's purely designed to design MVC applications. We extended CSS3. We use jQuery as a client. We support all the HTML5 browsers. We have a large set of rich controls, mainly targeting data-centric line of business applications. We have the ability to wrap in and incorporate some ASP.NET controls. We have the ability to extend and create new controls, a set of themes, and in the new version, we've added client API. You can write some client code, JavaScript code if you want. In some cases, it's required for offline. In some cases, it's required for optimization. And Form Designer, which allows you to really design new UIs or different UIs for different form factors. On the server side, next slide. Okay, on the server side, the features are form factor, and on the management side of it, or serving the right form factor to the right device, the ability to integrate with security, to manage offline mode, to adapt to any browser and optimize any browser, send the right JavaScript library to the right browser to perform, to create, best performance and best responsiveness, to provide features like, access controls and fine-grained security and management and the ability to scale up, and then also deploy on any cloud. With that, I would like to start with the session of today with talking about the installation of Visual WebGui. And Pali, the floor is yours. Take it from here. Pali will explain the technical terms of this one.
Thank you, Itzik. What we are going to emphasize in the installation part or the upgrading part of version 7 upgrade is that is the need to install with full administrative rights, which is the most common problem that users are having later on when they are going to start using their Visual WebGui environment, that there is some project types not missing and not working, etc. Our recommended approach is always to use full administrative privileges when you are installing, which means either of the two options: to use a registry modification that you can download from the resources link, the installing link there. It's just a simple registry modification that will add a context-sensitive menu item when you right-click the MSI installation file inside your Windows Explorer. Or you can do it a bit more manually by opening a command prompt as administrator and run the executable manually by command line. We always recommend, because of the convenience of it, to install the registry change and use the right click on the MSI file, so you will install with full privileges all the time. Of course, during upgrade from earlier version, you first have to uninstall the old version if you are going to continue on your same version of Visual Studio, and then you install the new one. And you should pay attention to the importance of clearing cache always. We'll come back to that later. What we are going to demonstrate today is in three parts, as has already been said. First, we are going to demonstrate an upgrade of a Visual Studio project. And next slide, please, Josh. Itzik, you want to take this one, introduce it?
Yeah, so we're going to upgrade the Visual Studio project. So first of all, just you should know that Visual WebGui can be installed on side by side on two different versions of Visual Studio. So for instance, if you're using the project or the current project of Visual WebGui 6.4 with Visual Studio 2008, you can install a new version of Visual WebGui on Visual Studio 2012 or 2013 and have it side by side with the older Visual WebGui. We're going to take the project from Visual WebGui 6.4 using 2008. That's going to be the demo that Pali is going to go through. And we're going to go through the automatic process of the structure, which Microsoft provides. We're going to fix some stuff there because Microsoft is not aware of the nuances of Visual WebGui project type. So Pali is going to go on the nuances, the things that you need to fix in this upgrade process, and then we're going to be in a good shape to start using the new project on Visual on the new Visual Studio. Pali, you can take it to the demo.
Yeah. Thank you, Itzik. Regarding the automated process that Microsoft Visual Studio will supply you, you can open a project originating from Visual Studio 2008. You can open it in 2012 or 2013, and it will automatically convert the project structure, etc. But it will not handle everything that we need to handle regarding Visual WebGui. It may add extra stuff to your web config files. It will miss upgrading the integrations of Visual WebGui, etc. And it may continue referencing the old Visual WebGui assemblies, etc. So what we are going to demonstrate today is a combination of automatic and a manual upgrade. So now we go to the demo. We have on screen here a Visual Studio 2008 application. It's just a simple application, but what we are going to demonstrate is that we have made some theme changes. We have customized a theme by overwriting very important list view resources here, and we have a form with a few controls that we'll show you here. Just a simple list view with an editor here, and the customization we have made through the theme is that we have increased the height of this panel here. It's just a simple change to demonstrate for the purpose of the demonstration. What we will do for the upgrade is that we will make just a simple copy of the 2008 project to a separate folder, so we have a backup here. And first thing to do is to get rid of the Gizmos assemblies here. And an important note regarding the FC key editor is that the resources, the client resources from the FC key editor authors, they have been upgraded in in version 7. So what you're going to do, we just delete that folder. It's the complete resources of the FC key editor are contained on this folder. So we'll simply delete these 3 folders for starters. At this point, we need a fresh copy of the FCK editor, and along with the installation of Visual WebGui, the companion kit is installed, and there is a copy of the FCK editor resources to be found on the companion kit folder. So we'll just grab that one. You'll see here this folder, and we will just copy the whole folder and place it under the 2012. Okay, now we are ready for (2012). Before we go into the conversion, I would like to suggest that you review a few options that I recommend that you set from the start. There are 2 options that you should check. Under projects and solutions, you should make sure that you always save new project when created. You will get problems with Visual WebGui when you create project without it, because Visual Studio will then cache the newly created project. So make sure you have this one here, clicked or checked. And secondly, I recommend that you go under the Visual WebGui folder here and clear this checkbox here. It will interfere in some scenarios, so you should just leave it unchecked. We will reference the themes assembly manually anyway, so there is no need for this one. At this point, we just open the project on the 2012 folder, our copy. And this is the automatic conversion wizard of Visual Studio that's handling this one, and you just allow it to upgrade and it will give you a dialog of the changes it's making. The first thing to do after such an upgrade between Visual Studio editions is to change the target framework to the one supposed to be in this version of Visual Studio, which is 4.5. And now we have converted the project structure, but there are stuff inside the project files that need to be checked. So at this point, we unload the project and edit the project file. Firstly, the Visual Studio Upgrade wizard will add 3 tags to the project file, these 3 here. You can leave it if you will, but if you leave it, you will constantly get the dialog that you noticed before on the conversion, and it will try converting or changing something every time you open or reload your project. So I usually just delete these 3. What you need to change here is the integration or the build task for Visual WebGui. You can simply recognize the line as the only line containing gizmos. Here it is referencing version 9 of Visual Studio, which is 2008. Easiest way is simply to delete this line. You will see later that it will be added automatically. If you are using Express version, you may want to enter the correct number for Visual Studio there. But we'll just delete it at this point. A very important fact when upgrading such a project is that there can be references to the old folders containing old versions or old assemblies, especially when we are upgrading with this procedure here that we started by copying the folder. So you should watch out for hint path settings, and if you look at this one, you see it still references the old Visual Studio 2008 project, and if you will leave this one here, it will continue referencing the old forms assembly, which will give you real headaches later on if you leave it. Simply delete the hint path lines, and now we are done with the first step of the project upgrade, and we reload it. Now we use the enable Visual WebGui feature here, which will add the build task correctly for your Visual Studio version. The one we deleted from the project file before, it will be added here, and it will also update your web config file a bit. You'll see that a bit later. If we expand the references section, you will see warnings all over the place and duplicate references. I usually just make note of the Gizmox assemblies referenced to this particular project and then delete them all or remove the references, and then we just add them again. And pay attention to the fact that many of them will be added with copy local false, so make sure that you get them all copied locally. Okay, over to you, Itzik.
Thank you, Pali. Thank you very much. Josh, can you get the presentation back? Okay, so we've seen how to upgrade the Visual Studio version. And the next thing we want to do is we want to upgrade the Visual WebGui APIs, which have changed. Next slide. So first of all, why was the API changed even? So normally we would like to preserve the background compatibility, and we're insisting on preserving the background compatibility whenever possible. And in some cases, we do even, force the system to preserve API compatibility, because we know you guys and a lot of the, Visual WebGui users, they have a lot of applications, big ones, and they need to work a lot to change it. But there were some things that made us change the APIs, like flexibility of environment, providing more options. If a certain API was using an enum or something like that, and now is using a different type of method of selecting stuff, it's just to extend and provide more options and extend the object model. So we haven't done a lot of those, and most of it will be solved automatically, as Pali will show. But you need to be aware of the things that we changed, things like default themes, certain parameters types that we changed, certain client-server relations in terms of resources management. And there are two things we need to remember. There's one wizard in Visual Studio that we've added that Pali will show in a bit, which actually takes and changes the APIs, and also some things that we need to remember to do manually. So Pali, the floor is yours again to demonstrate this part of the upgrade process.
Thank you, Itzik. We are back to the same Visual Studio 2012 project. We completed upgrading the project structure and set the correct references, etc. At this point, we start by building to see if we have any upgrade errors or API errors. And for the sake of this demonstration, I entered two of the most common ones that may have changed. And you should, while building after the upgrade, you should pay really close attention to both errors and warnings. Make sure not to ignore the warnings like this, because then you will miss a few important ones. What we have done for version 7 is that we have put quite an effort into an upgrade wizard, which can be found under Tools and Gizmos, upgrade to version 7. You can get a list on the wiki on the task that this upgrade wizard will handle for you, and we will keep adding to this gradually while we enhance it. You can just run it here, and the first optional change that you can choose or not choose is the default theme. In version 6.4, the Vista theme was the default theme in the Visual WebGui environment, and when you upgrade, when you run on version 7, the Live Office is the default theme. If you choose to check this box here, the upgrade wizard will firstly register the Vista theme in your web config automatically, and secondly, it will set it as the default theme in web config again. You can a log file is written about all the steps or changes that the wizard will take during run, so you can. It's written on the project folder, so you can take a look afterwards. All the project in the solution you have opened will be listed here, and you can optionally choose the ones you want to upgrade. So let's just run this. It's fairly quick on a small project. I would like to point out the fact that you should use the Save All button quite often, because in this case the upgrade wizard is updating both web config and even project under the hood, so make sure you click Save All regularly. If we build again now, you'll see that the errors are gone, but we still have some warnings. This particular warning is for FCK editor, which had a change in namespace, and I recommend that you take care of that and to make sure it's the correct one. And since we changed the namespace of the FCK editor, and also since the FCK editor requires registration in your web config, we now need to change the registration for that particular control. The easiest way is simply to remove the old one and then simply add the new one, and make sure you are referencing it from the namespace that you chose. Like I mentioned, okay, we should first see the errors are gone now if we build. And now it builds successfully all the way. Like I mentioned before, the upgrade wizard as well as the project editing is a little delicate for the integrations of any Visual Studio integration. So I recommend that when you have either edited your project or made background changes to web config, that you exit Visual Studio and load it again, just to make sure that it loads all the cache or clears all the cache that may be there. Just a sec. As I told you before, the errors are gone, but we can take a look at what it did for us. These two properties were the ones that gave us the error in the first build, and the change in the API was from a Boolean to a class type. The upgrade wizard took care of that for us. Secondly, it made some changes to our web config file. There were two levels of the changes that were made here. First, when we chose to enable Visual WebGui on the project level, enable the integrations, this line here was added or updated actually, because it had a reference to the old version, Visual Studio 2008. The version number here is different for every version of Visual Studio. This is for Visual Studio 2012, and you may have quite a few references to the old version in your web config, depending on how many controls you registered from the framework, etc. Easiest way is simply to make a copy of the version that's the correct one, and you can of course do a search replace for the whole web config file. It is pretty safe, and in most cases all references to the old version should be replaced with a new one. For this particular demo, we will do it manually, just to point out the sections that you should be aware of. Firstly, it's the control section, but we already took care of that by deleting the registration of the FCK editor, so this registration line has the correct version. Secondly, it's the theme registration. The wizard automatically added the Vista theme, and it has the correct version, but other themes may have the wrong one, and we will leave our custom theme alone. It's not following the same versioning. Two more places in webconfig are really important. It's the HTTP handler or the server side. You need to make sure that it's referencing the correct version. Under System Web Server, you have the handler section with the extension you are using for Visual WebGui, and you replace that with the correct one. And secondly, you have the HTTP handlers under System Web, which should be replaced also. There are basically two ways to upgrade your webconfig file between versions or Visual Studio versions or whatever. You can firstly do it manually like I'm doing here. It may require that you know a lot about how a correct webconfig should look like. And even if you know how it should look like in your old version, it's not always having all the settings that you will get from a new version. One trick that you can use as an alternate way to upgrade your webconfig is to create a new Visual WebGui project, application project, and make a copy of the webconfig created by the project templates and use that one as a base on your new application, and transferring over the settings or the tags that you know should be there from your old project. That way you will get a baseline webconfig that is correct for this particular version of Visual Studio, and you know all the entries that you will add because you moved them yourself from the old one. So there are basically two ways to do this upgrade. Part of what I mean is some extra stuff that may be added by the upgrade wizard of Visual Studio, and for this particular upgrade I know that this tag here should not be in that file. It is not existing in new webconfig files for Visual Studio 2012, so we simply remove it for the demo purposes. And at this point we have completed the upgrade steps, so we'll just build and see if we have. This is just a warning about the registration of the form. We'll leave that alone for now and just run it. You'll see the spinner here is from the Vista theme, which the upgrade wizard took care of. But surprisingly, we have the same application that doesn't look anything like the one we used before. The reason being that is the Internet Explorer is running in compatibility mode because we were using it in compatibility mode for the Visual Studio 2008 test, and it's not compatible with version 7. Just by switching it over to standards mode, we will get the same application, but again, surprisingly, there is no editor here, and that's one of the facts we pointed out in an earlier slide, that clearing of cache is really, really important. Oh, there it wasn't supposed to be there in the demo, but anyway, what I'm going to emphasize is that you should upper the private version every time that you make changes to something that could affect client resources. So we should have a pretty similar looking form right now with the editor app and everything similar to the old one. Itzik, over to you.
Thank you, Pali. Just to point out, you can see that the FCK editor looks differently because the new version of Visual WebGui integrates with the newer version of FCK editor altogether. So you've seen Pali removing all the resources from the old FCK editor and putting back the new FCK editor. So that's why, you know, the difference in the FCK editor looks. The second thing that we wanna show is, or the last thing in terms of the process of the upgrade, we want to show or point out at least is the client-side customization things that you might have had in your application. So in your existing application, you might have some client-side resources customization, themes that you customized, or you know, maybe some custom controls, extended controls, and etc. Those type of things are most vulnerable, I would say, for the latest upgrade from 6.4 to 7. So why was the HTML structure changed to begin with? Again, here we would prefer to preserve backward compatibility, sorry. But the problem here is that once we wanted to support HTML5 and standard mode of HTML, standard document type, we had to make some substantial changes in the HTML side and the JavaScript side, and in order to extend to different browsers like mobile browsers and like, you know, other devices browsers, and open up all the other browsers like Opera and Safari and all the others, we had to align with W3C and make some substantial change. So there is also dramatic improvement in the client-side performance because of that, because the HTML structure is lighter. So what are the things that were changed? So a lot of things have changed here. Probably mostly in the HTML structure, some with the JQT, or I would say that, you know, at the moment JQT is behind the scene. In 6.4 you had JQT version and an XSLT version. If you have made direct customizations to JQT, to jQuery templates, those will have to be changed. The client invocation mechanism was completely replaced to align with the client APIs and the client DOM, which is the next point. It's mainly an addition, but it allows you to really improve your client customization and align with best practice. So Pali will take us through one example of the things that can happen to you guys, but this type of you know, change is the most substantial one, and therefore we would like to at least help you out categorizing your existing problem. Start you know, kind of like comparing the differences in the client resources in Visual WebGui, and maybe conclude with fixing those customizations. And in worst case scenarios, you can always turn to our support or even our custom services to allow you to or to help you out with the upgrade of this part of the customization. So Pali, the floor is yours for the demo. Thank you.
Thank you, Itzik. George, can you transfer control? Yeah, thank you. Okay, we are once again back to this same application we've been using for the upgrade demo. To recap what we had on our 6.4 version, we changed, we customized a theme for customizing the list view and increased the height of this panel area here, the paging area. It was just a simple change for the sake of the demonstration. And if we switch to our theme, which we haven't changed in version 7 now, we will get errors. It's simply incompatible with version 7. Reason being that what we did in the customization of the theme, intentionally this time, but it's a pretty common scenario, is that we overwrote two very important resources of the list view. We overwrote the XSLT, which is responsible for rendering or generating the HTML for the control, and the CSS file. As we have now version 7, we will need to take care of these changes, and we cannot use the ones from the version 6.4 because there's a lot of changes that we have made on the client resources files. The approach we will take for this particular customization is that we will simply remove the overrides that we made, and we will redo the customization for the height of the paging panel of the list view. We will open the theme in the theme designer. And go down to the list view control here. The template is the XSLT files, and you will notice that the arrow here indicates that this one is a standard resource that the theme brings with it, and this one here doesn't have any arrow, which means it's already overwritten. We will right-click it and delete. Delete in this case doesn't mean remove completely. It simply means reverting to the standard of the theme. So you will see it goes back and gets an arrow. And for the sake of the demonstration continuing, we will override it again. So we will now, what we have now done is that we have removed the 6.4 code and overridden it again, but now with the version 7 code. The same will do for the style sheet. It's the same situation. This here is brought in from the 6.4 theme, and we will revert to the standard one and override it again, and we'll just make this demo change here, just hard code and increased oops, sorry. My mouse is playing tricks on me. Like this. We hard code the height of the paging panel, and we are done with the redoing of the customization we made. Finally, like I mentioned before, caching is really important. So every time you change a client resource, you should upper the private version of your web config. Just build it. And run it. And if we now change to our custom theme, you will see that the paging panel has its height has increased, but like Itzik mentioned before, there are more changes, enhanced properties, etc. So we would have to do more to make it look okay, but the panel height has changed. So we have made a version 7 theme change effective. Okay, Itzik, over to you.
Thank you, Pali. So that was the last change that we wanted to share with you, kind of like in a demonstration mode today. But we want to also emphasize that we have a large set of resources on the website. The first one is, Josh, next slide, please. The first one is the development center, in which from which you can, it's a kind of a hub from which you can go to different places like videos of the new video tutorials and getting started of the new version and new stuff that you can do with it, like the client APIs and the device integration and etc. Things like the companion kit, which is the next slide, is linked here. And in the companion kit itself, you will find all the controls, or at least most of the controls and most of the capabilities in Visual WebGui. Of course, it doesn't cover everything because everything is really the universe and it's really a lot. But it covers the main capabilities that you can use, a lot of demonstrations, code discussion, which means that everything is explained further, not just how it's done, pieces of code that you can download both in VB.NET or C#, and etc. So there's a lot of good stuff going on in the companion kit that you can use. Next resource is that you can use is the forums. So Pali manages the forums, and he knows that there are many questions and answers that you can probably use and search for. If you have a specific question, maybe someone already asked it. If not, you can ask it, and we tend to answer pretty quickly on those questions. There are some other community members which are who are involved in providing some answers to you guys, not just us, but Pali is providing a lot of answers. And the next resource that we have is the wiki site, wiki.visualwebgui.com. It's very important to know this one, because there are walkthroughs and articles on deployment, on upgrade, the differences between 6.4 and 7, except for this webinar. Those are specified in this list of things that you should probably know, and etc. Many things are documented in this wiki, so I strongly recommend using it. And I would say you should find your way into those resources and find the things that in the resources that you want to use. And let us know if you have questions, if you can access something, or you think that something should appear in the wiki and etc. It's always helpful to get your feedback on the resources we have. Now is the time for questions. You should at this point use your questions panel that you have in your GoToWebinar panel. I already have some questions, so I'm going to echo the questions and then answer them. So Pali and I will share and answer a few of the questions. So first question, will this demo be downloadable at the end of the presentation? Certainly yes. So Josh is gonna take it, convert it to the right format, and upload it back to the webinar. So you'll have a link on the website. You'll certainly be able to watch it offline. Hopefully other people who couldn't join us today because of many reasons, time differences and others, will be able to join or to watch it offline. Will you be converting? Will you be covering? Sorry, the upgrade path for Express Edition. So Express Edition Visual WebGui is identical under the hood. Differences that you have in the upgrade process will be as a result of not having Visual Studio integration for it. So many of the things that Pali has done directly on the integration, you will need to do directly on the web config. So it's pretty much the same process. It's pretty much the same steps, but the limitations of Visual Studio Express are the limitations that will probably change a bit the process. So Pali, if you have anything else to add on this thing of upgrading from Express Edition that will be helpful here, it will be a good time.
Yeah, I think a recommendation or a tip for that process would be to use the create a new application in the Express target version and use the project file as a baseline for the changes that we did using the integration in the demo. You can see the entries that we edited in or removed in the project file. For instance, it can be brought in from a baseline project file that you create, brand new one. And similar with the web config changes, the registration can be copied from a baseline web config. If you have problems, you can also look into the web config file of either companion kit or the the other demo applications installed with Visual Studio or with Visual WebGui. So I think you can pretty much follow the same procedure for the Express version.
Okay, thank you, Pali. Pali, do you want to refer to the next question regarding the CK editor? The question here is with regards to, I thought the recommended editor was CK editor, isn't FCK editor deprecated?
Yeah, I'll take that one too. It's basically the name inside Visual WebGui is unchanged. It's still FCK editor, but under the hood we are using CK editor resources. So it basically is the CK editor we are using inside the framework.
Excellent, thanks. Another question, the included VWG chart control is VisiFire based according to the slide. Is that correct? If so, does it mean that VWG 7 includes the VisiFire license for deployment and development? So no, the VisiFire is an independent company. If you want to use their charting, you'll have to license it separately. The only thing that we include in Visual WebGui as part of it is the wrapping part and the part that you can incorporate in the VisiFire controls. So licensing-wise, it has to be separately licensed from VisiFire company. Pali, do you have anything else to add on that area of VisiFire and upgrade?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Excellent. Next question. What is to be gained by upgrading? Any new control, bug fixes, increased speed, etc. So yeah, generally, I try to present in the beginning of the session, some of the things that we've added, but the gap is huge. We've added a lot of capabilities, a lot of richness. The HTML performance is dramatically higher. You have more browsers supported out of the box. All the W3C actually browsers, including Opera and others. All the mobile devices, form factor awareness, client APIs, ability to integrate with the devices. We have some webinars that we had on version 7. We're going to have soon version 7.1. There are many, many changes and upgrades that you would probably want to use in your new application, new era of mobile and stuff. So yeah, the gap is huge, and you have a lot to gain from upgrading the older version to Visual WebGui 7. Next question. What are the changes you've made in the response that VWG server sends to the client? So again, the methodology of request response of Visual WebGui hasn't changed, okay? But some of the messages might have changed. So if you highly depend on the messages and you do something and control those messages, and you add things of your own to this message, and etc., you will have to closely examine the differences. There are not so many differences. There are many, many additions, I would say. So you won't find a lot of dramatic changes from the methodology and the things that we've done in the past, but you might find additional tag types, additional property types, additional property names, and etc. Next question. First of all, thank you very much. That's our pleasure, of course. There will be a video recording. Yeah, as I mentioned before, there will be a video recording of this session later on today, or worst case tomorrow, on the website, so it will be possible to watch it offline. Another question. I'm interested in the use of VWG development server. Thanks. So development server is there to serve you guys test your application. So for instance, you won't be able to deploy an application which serves multiple, and that's just an example, multiple devices without the business server. So in order to develop something and still test it, and not having to deploy a full business server with all the license, that's where development server comes in and allows you to test your development and really run and test the features of the full business server. It's limited to 60 days, but it's still out there to serve your needs to develop stuff and test it. I hope this answers your question. Okay, another question. I actually created a new project and simply imported all my forms. Thought that would be easiest.
This is an update to.
So that,
sorry, Itzhak. This is an
yeah,
update to the Express question before. So he's actually confirming that it's working for him. What we suggested.
You're right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Another question here: can I still deploy a VWG server project directly on IIS, or is the VWG server component anyway always required? What are the limitations of only IIS? So Visual WebGui is still only IIS. The business server allows you to extend further, and you just have to activate the license on a simple plain IIS to gain accessibility to the other features, to be able to deploy multiple form factors, to be able to add capabilities like scalability and modal dialogues, and etc. So it's still same IIS, it's still the same infrastructure, nothing has changed. But you have to have either the Express version of the server, which serves test scenarios, or very simple deployment, small deployment with 2-3 users, or if you have staging environment, etc. We strongly recommend the business server for any production level deployment. So you want to have the business server for so many reasons, like SLA for production level and so many other features, scalability and performance. So that's a good question. It's always IIS technically, but you'll have to activate the license. Next question: when will the demos for VWG WebSockets features be available? So it's very, very soon. We already deployed it, and it should be on the air in the next couple of days. So stay tuned, and we'll update you. Probably if you know anything else that you want to add on this part, you're most welcome.
No, I think we'll just air it at the same time. We will announce the version 7.1 release. It should be any day now.
Exactly. So 7.1 release will be the first version that contains WebSockets, and that's right. Once we announce it, you should have the resources on air, so it's going to be aligned with this time. Thank you. What if I decide to create a new project in Visual Studio 2012 and simply add resources from Visual Studio 2010 instead of this cumbersome upgrade process? So, yeah, so the process of upgrading using the Microsoft, or upgrading Visual Studio version based on the Microsoft automatic path process is not necessarily the only one. You can do it this way, yeah, but still you'll have to go through some of the things that Pali went through. So the things that the wizard actually, the Microsoft wizard added, those will not be needed, but you'll still have to upgrade. You'll still have to create a new Visual WebGui project, take the web config out of there, and use it as a base, because otherwise you might end up having old web config with the new version and missing some properties and missing some stuff that will interfere in the runtime process, or in the configuration, or in the capabilities that you can use. So generally, yeah, there are many ways to do it, but carefully follow the things that we've done. Not all of it are, as a result of the automatic process. Some of it is really objective things that you need to do in order to upgrade your version. Anything to add here, Pali, on your end?
Yeah, I think the risk you may take if you decide to go down that path to add the items from the old one is that you have to pay really close attention to the structure of the old project. You must make sure it will be identical, otherwise the namespaces might have changed, etc. But other than that, you can choose the procedure that you feel best with.
Yeah. So it's an alternative path, certainly, but you need to pay attention to the details. Another question: Visual WebGui is relying on WinForms. That's not true, by the way. Visual WebGui is not relying on WinForms. It's just mimicking some of WinForms APIs. And we keep on hearing that WinForms is dead. So that's true or not really our business. It's Microsoft business to care whether WinForms is dead or not. We're not WinForms. WinForms is just the development paradigm we've chosen to kind of like, say, okay, that's a mature development paradigm. We are not relying on any resource from WinForms. except for extending the WinForms designer, but in our way. So it's all completely from scratch web stuff, and there's no reference whatsoever to WinForms. Is WinForms look and feel appropriate for the mobile world? No, it's not, and that's why Visual WebGui is different. Visual WebGui is providing Web 2.0 and mobile experience, and with the controls and the themes that we've provided and the capabilities that we've added, a lot more on top of what WinForms has as a basic capabilities, you will figure out really fast that Visual WebGui is really targeting web and mobile world, whereas you're right, WinForms is not targeting this world. Did you improve the initial handshake time it took to connect with a new session? I'm not specifically aware to this problem. Maybe Polly can shed some light on it, but I would tell you that generally Visual WebGui between 6.4 and 7, we've made a lot of improvement in the protocol, a lot of improvement in the rendering part, and a lot of optimization. So I would tell you that applications that run with version 7 tend to be significantly faster, generally, not just handshake and startup and initialize time, than 6.4 applications. Paul, if you have anything to add here.
I think that, no, I don't think so, but the principles are the same in version 7, meaning that on first contact or first request, you have to download the core to the client, etc. So there will always be an initial handshake. And on your IIS web server, if you are the first client and the application pool isn't already running, you will get a delay, just like with any other ASP.NET application.
Yeah, that's right. So the handshake will always be there, you're right. But we improved the protocol, so generally applications run faster. But yeah, a handshake of downloading all the resources. Please remember at Visual Web, we act as an empty client. We just download some JavaScript to the client in the first approach. When the client first approaches the server, it's cached on the client, but this initialize time might take a bit longer than a general initialization of the next access to the same application. What else do we have here? When will we have explanation for WebSockets available? Okay, that's again, WebSockets are going to be available with version 7.1 announcement. We expect to announce the version in the next few days, and with it together, we're going to upload resources to explain on WebSockets. So at the moment, since we don't really have an official version with WebSockets on air, the resources are not there, but very soon they're going to be there, and we're talking about days, okay? Another question, in your experience, is Visual Studio 2013 stable for VWG development, or is it best to stay within Visual Studio 2012 for now? Pali, you can take it. I think I know the answer, but you can take it.
Yeah, I haven't seen really any difference. So from my point of view, it's equally stable, whichever you choose. So just pick the one you like better. But 2013 is quite okay. It's a little bit newer that Visual WebGui is supporting 2013, but I think we have gone past the initial problems or bugs. So I don't know any 2013 specific ones that I recall.
Yeah, okay, thanks. The next question, are there any differences in performance when targeting different .NET Frameworks versions? Visual Studio 2010, 4, which is 4, of course, Visual Studio 2012, 4.5, Visual Studio 2013, which is 4.51. I don't know of any. Pali, anything on your end?
No, neither do I.
I know that Microsoft tend to improve performance as they go up with the .NET versions. So, yeah, it's really relying on the newest version of .NET. So if there are differences in this infrastructure, it's out of our hands. In most of the cases, Microsoft tend to improve and not go backwards. But other than that, in terms of visual web GUI, pure visual web GUI, there shouldn't be any difference from a visual web GUI perspective between those versions.
A bit more on that. Under the hood, it is in Visual WebGui. It's exactly the same code that we are using for all the Visual Studio versions. So on Visual WebGui level, it's identical.
Yeah, exactly. So from Visual WebGui standpoint, there's no difference. If there are differences in the underlying ASP.NET infrastructure or Visual Studio or .NET version, framework version, and in performance or responsiveness or stuff like that, that would be out of our hands, but generally it goes forward in most of the cases. Okay, I see there's another question popping up now. Are there any web applications deployed with Visual WebGui, especially mobile ones, from which we can get some inspiration? Are the mail and catalog samples still available? So first of all, yeah, the mail, about the mail, I'm not sure. Probably, is the mail available?
I think it's not been upgraded to version 7, but our old version is available.
Right. Yeah. So we have the mobile CRM version, which is out there, and you can browse to it and take a look at this one. So this is the only application that I know of that, kind of like a demonstrate, but we're working on additional ones. We feel that you guys should have some other references of mobile applications that you can use, and we're working on adding more and more application demos specifically, or I would say especially for mobile, but not just. Another question here.
Sorry, it's to add to your. The last question is asking about the catalog sample also. The catalog demo application has basically been replaced with the companion kit, which has most of the samples that the catalog had before and many, many more. So you should turn to the catalog for samples. You should turn to the companion kit, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But we're still thinking of and working on additional applications, as I mentioned before. I know that companion kit is tackling things from a different angle than the catalog example, and we're working to complement this part which the catalog actually provided. Are there any IE11 compatibility issues with version 7? Not that I know of. Version 7 should fully be compatible with IE11. Is there anything I'm missing, Pali, on this one?
No, I don't think so. We had some initial problems on version 7.1 or 7.0, I think it was. But as far as I know, they have all been solved, so there are no outstanding IE11 issues that I recall.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. At this point, I would like to thank you very much. Oh, there's another question here. Just to confirm, you can still write applications that work on mobile browsers for Express Edition. Well, you can. If the application works on mobile, you can create one layout for a specific mobile device, and you're not using the new form factor tools. You can adjust your original application to have one layout which is okay for a mobile. You won't be able to fork to different devices. That's the capability that you won't be able to do with the Express Edition. With the Express Edition, you will be able to serve one layout, be it mobile or web. You won't be able to fork into a few layouts of the same application. I hope it makes sense. I hope you understood my answer. Excellent. Guys, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us today on the last hour. Josh will make sure that this thing will be on the website very soon for you guys for offline view. And we're hoping to see you around in the forums and in the next webinars like Visual WebGui 7.1 and etc. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Polly. Thank you so much for the demos. Thank you for the very good presentation.
Thank you, guys.